hair, and the house had become full of a fragrance of this perfume. Now, notice here, she is doing an act. She is showing an act of love for Yeshua. And notice how it filled the entire home. There was an outcome. The Bible talks about a pleasing fragrance in the nostrils of God. So she's doing this out of love. She's providing what is the family's security. Her security now is not in anything that represents just money or something physical. Her security, the wealth of her family, is sitting with them at that time, Yeshua. He's our defense. So what happens? Well, notice verse 4. Therefore, one of his disciples. Now here again, this is just another example of how the disciples don't understand. They simply don't perceive what they should. And the one who is furthest away from knowing the truth is this one we're going to talk about. Look again at this verse, verse 4. Therefore, one of his disciples said something. Who was that? Judas Iscariot, the son of Simon, who was the one who was about to betray him. And notice his concern. He doesn't see the spiritual significance. He's not looking at the heart of Mary, who took this costly possession, the family's wealth, this poor family's prized possession, the security, their physical security. He doesn't think anything about that. No, his mind is somewhere else. And notice that what he speaks is a lie. He says here, once more, verse 5, why is this perfume? It could have been sold for 300 denarius and given to the poor. Now, notice, he says something, but he's lying. He has no intent. That's not his concern. He wants it sold, and he wants the cash to be done what with? Well, he says it could have been given to the poor. Why did he say that? Well, the scripture tells us. Verse 6. He said this not because of any concern which he had for the poor, but he said that because he was a thief. What do thieves do? Lie. Why do they lie? To cover up their true intent. He puts a real spiritual package upon it, that his concern was for the poor. But we see something. I mean, this value, he says, 300 denarius. What's a denarius? It is 1 day of labor. We're talking about a year salary of a common wage earner in that time, 1 year saving. Now you can imagine how hard it would have been for someone who lived in Bethany, the house of the poor people, to save up a year's salary. But that's what that family had done. And Mary, out of simply love for Yeshua, understanding who he is, and what else? Understanding what was going to happen to him. Now, this woman, she is the only one that understood a very important truth, and that is, it's Passover time. Yeshua came up, and what was he going to do? Well, Passover, one of the things that should come into our mind when we hear that is not just redemption, but the means of redemption, and that is death. The rabbis teach there can be no Passover without death. That's why we have both the death of the lamb or the death of the firstborn. But you can't say both. Death is going to come to your home, either the firstborn or the lamb. So Mary, she understood this. Yeshua is going to die. He had said over and over and over to his disciples that he was going to go up to Jerusalem when? On Passover. That he was going to be betrayed, delivered over to the high priests and the elders, and eventually be put to death. And what else? Well, that he was going to be crucified. The Jews didn't crucify. It was the Romans. So Yeshua said everything that was going to happen to them, happened to him. But they did not perceive it. At least Mary understood one aspect, and that was he was going to die. Now, once again, we're talking about Judas Iscariot, the son of Simon. He says, what is this waste? What are you doing with this perfume? It's worth 300 denarius, 300 days of labor. It could have been sold and given to the poor. Well, he said that as a lie because he was a thief, and he was the one that held the purse for the ministry, Yeshua's ministry. And what did he do? Well, those things that were cast into it, he used to remove. He used to take them out. Therefore, Yeshua said, leave her alone. Why? Verse 7. It was on account of the day of my burial that she has kept this. Now, what does that mean? Well, it means that she had saved up, not just for a physical security. She had saved this up. Now, did she know always that he was going to die? That was the purpose of Messiah. And could she have saved up 300 days of wages in just a short period of time? No. What we are to glean from that is this, that she had saved up this money for the promises of God, meaning to be used for a spiritual purpose. And when she understood who Yeshua is, what he was going to do, that he was going to die, she wanted to pour that pricely perfume upon him. So Yeshua says, leave her alone. For the day of my burial, she has kept this. For the poor you'll always have with you, but me you will not always have. Look at verse 9. Now, verse 9, we see something. We read here, therefore, this great crowd, after knowing, and this is a crowd that came from the Judeans, after they knew that he was there, they came not only to see Yeshua, but also in order also that they would see yet Lazarus, whom he had raised from the dead. Now, these Judeans, they were coming once again back to Bethany. They came not just because of Yeshua, but they came because of Lazarus. You see, some of them may have only heard the accounts, and they wanted to see it with their own eyes. Now, we know that Yeshua tells us to pray for our enemies. Why? Well, it's the right thing to do. We want God's will to be upon all people. We want to see change come about in people's lives. But here's the key. We never know who is going to receive that change and who not. And we're going to find out in this passage of Scripture that there's going to be again those from the Judeans, those who were at once against him, that they're going to be changed, that they're going to believe in him. And there's ought to be others who see this proof of Lazarus' resurrection and what it meant concerning Yeshua. And they're going to want to do what? They're going to want to put Lazarus to death. So once again, look if you would to verse 10. This group that came to see Lazarus, it says in verse 10, and the high priests, they took counsel in order also that Lazarus to be put to death. Now, here again, we've already saw at the end of our previous message that there were those of the Pharisees and the Sanhedrin, that they took counsel together, part of the Sanhedrin, with the purpose to kill Yeshua. Now they want to kill Lazarus. What has he done? I mean, did they have any Torah basis for killing not only Yeshua, but also Lazarus? And the answer is absolutely not. They're talking about a great sin, murder. Why? They want to hold on to their earthly position. And let me tell you, these are religious leaders. They knew the Torah very well. Their whole life was based upon a religious context. But because they weren't interested in the things of God, notice what they were doing. And that's a message that is a warning for you and me. We can be religious. We can carry this book. We can go as they did day in and day out to the temple. We can go to the house of God to worship. We can wear all types of religious garments and whatnot. But if we are not committed to the purposes of God, once again, I say this a lot, we are going to be in spiritual